Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Purposeful Conversations with me, Emmy, here in the Pame Code Facebook community. And for today, we're going to have a really fascinating conversation. I invited a life coach who I actually got attracted to her post on LinkedIn. She posted something around being able to say no and not feeling guilty about it because there are so many of us here in this community who are, people who are willing to serve and people who actually pretty much say yes to everything and to the point that we burn ourselves out in the process. So for today, we'll talk about how to set those boundaries, how to say no, and how to do that without actually feeling bad about it. So without further ado, let's all welcome our guest today, Lana Kenny. Hi, Lana.
Hi, Emee. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much for joining us. So, before we get into the conversation about setting boundaries and being able to say no, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? What do you do and how did you get to where you are now?
Well, I am a life coach, and I help women who find themselves in situation where they think, "Oh my God, how did I end up in this situation or in this life? This is not what I had pictured myself 10, 15, 20 years ago. How did I end up here? I'm not feeling happy. I'm not feeling fulfilled." Or they're feeling that some things in their life need to be different or they need to change and they don't know how. They feel stuck, they feel empty, they don't feel motivated to do anything, and they just feel really down and maybe a bit depressed as well. So I have been through a similar situation in my life a few years ago, and it took me about 4 years to put myself back together, find my strength and my energy back again, and believe in myself again. So I want to help people who are not necessarily just women, but in general, people who are feeling like that, feeling stuck in their life, and they want to make that step forward to happier future, happier life, and just find peace with themselves, find strength in themselves again, and be able, because I do believe if we are happy, we're spreading happiness around us.
Yes, you can actually spread it, if you are, you can't really fill from an empty cup. So you actually do need to,
Exactly.
to look after yourself. And I know that there are people, especially those who are in their midlife and, they've been, in this position for quite a while. They've been okay for the first, couple of years into their career. And then they ended up in a path and they couldn't really believe that they are in that position, and they feel as if they're stuck and they have nowhere to go. So I think what you have to offer as a life coach is actually valuable, to help people get out from that position, because certainly it's not a good place to be.
That's for sure. That's for sure. It has been proven by studies that for any person to feel happy, we need to be fulfilled socially. Means we need to be part of some social group, like a family, or have a circle of friends. We need to be fulfilled professionally. We want to be acknowledged for our skills or our knowledge, no matter what it is. You're a good farmer, you're a good teacher, or you're a person who does brilliant furniture, or you're a life coach, or you're an accountant. It doesn't matter. We need our skills and abilities to be acknowledged and respected and valued. And also, another key ingredient of our happiness is feeling independent in your own decisions. And of course, in any social part of our life, are we have to find compromises in order for them to work. But what we get and what we end up in sometimes is finding too many compromises, and very often
Mm.
not in our benefit,
Mm.
and that is fine. But sometimes we go too far and push our own interest a bit too far back, and which means if we don't have this fulfillment coming our way, we start feeling a bit empty because we give too much and don't receive enough in return.
Yeah, it's not
So
really in alignment with, with
no,
what sparks joy in you and what really lights you up when you do that. And I think that it, for some people, this is where the people pleasers come in, because and that's why setting boundaries and being able to say no is also important, because as you've said, there might be occasions where we are asked to do something that is actually outside of what we would want to do or what we are prepared to put ourselves into. It's not something that's making us feel alive or passionate, but we end up going there because we are afraid to say no. We're afraid to set boundaries. So in that respect, if we talk about that part where you are able to set boundaries and being able to say no, how do you start that? If someone asks you to do something and you're not really sure if it is good for you, how do you gracefully say no?
Mhm. Well, the very, very first step for setting boundaries, I always say, is recognizing that you need to set boundaries. Recognizing that you've gone a bit too far in your giving and you're not comfortable in that situation. Acknowledging the situation, understanding that you have ended up in it for whatever reason, and understanding that you need to make a change. Every change comes with the decision. So then you always ask yourself, so where do I say stop? Where do I say it is enough? If we're talking professional, regarding like professional, our professional life as an employee, or as a person who works as a freelancer, here situations cannot be always straightforward. If you work in and you depend on this salary, on this job, you cannot always say to your boss, "No, I'm not going to do this." And it's not always easy to go straight away from yes to no. But you can make people, you can inform people that you're not comfortable with that. If you, for example, an example, you've been asked to work a weekend and you're not comfortable with that, tell your boss that. I
Mm,
cannot do that. I am not comfortable with that. I have not planned for this. And we start with letting people know that we are not comfortable, that we are not happy about this decision, because our emotions are important and there are no bad emotions. And sometimes people who ask us for a favor or for some work to be done, they might not even understand what they're doing. They might not even understand that they're breaking our boundaries. So the very, very first step is to let them know about it. And
mm,
that can actually sometimes, in many situations, can solve the situation
mm.
itself. If we are talking about a bit more of a manipulative people and toxic people who sometimes are also present in our life, and we cannot just simply say no because they don't see it, they don't hear it. No matter how many times we say it, 5, 10, 50 times, they don't
They
care.
don't hear, they don't
They don't care.
understand the word
They don't
no.
understand the word. So even if it's your close family members, here the advice would be to reduce communication with them to a minimum, as much as possible, to avoid or make phone calls really short. Or if you live with these people, because sometimes it's our parents, sometimes it's our brothers and sisters, find a way to move, find a way to reduce communication to a very, very, very minimum.
Mm,
Understanding the problem and understanding that you need to find a way always helps, because then your brain starts working from um, how do I get through this situation into how can I change the situation?
mm.
How can I avoid this situation? And from this step, you start already preserving your own energy. When you start
Yes.
recognizing the manipulations in communication which come from people, that you cannot really reduce communication. When you start recognizing manipulations and stop playing their games, stop getting wound up by what they say, stop acting like they're expecting you, stop giving in, you're already saying no and setting the boundaries.
Mm.
They might not be happy about it.
Yeah. So in
Up to
terms
you.
of, there might be, yeah, there are different ways to do this, probably depending on the person that you're interacting
Exactly.
with. And the truth is, when you set boundaries and when you say no to people who are actually caring and understanding, they
Mhm.
would get it. They
Oh,
actually
yes.
wouldn't be offended, and they wouldn't, for them, at least it is clear, so they can actually do what they need to do. So for example, in my case, I've worked with people who are so efficient, and they get everything done. you wouldn't believe how well they work. And when you ask something from them, they would either say yes, they will do it, or no, they can't because they're too busy. And these are the people who are the most efficient, because
Mm-hmm.
they don't actually say yes when they have no capacity. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? They will only
Yes.
say yes when they are able. And when they say no, it's not that they want to offend, it's not that they're being rude or anything. It's just they have no capacity, and it gives you, the other person who's asking for the request, alternatives, another way to do what you have to do, because at least now you know that the person you're asking help from can't do it. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, from my perspective, when I tell people, so I'm so sorry, I can't do it because I simply don't have the capacity. The
Mm-hmm.
people who are understanding and people who are actually open-minded, they're okay with that. They would say, "Oh, thank you very much for telling me. At least I'll find another way. Don't worry,
Yeah, very
I'll
often
find
it's
a
nothing
way."
personal. Yes, very
Yeah,
often it's nothing personal. It's just
it's
lack of time or
yeah.
lack of resources to
But
to help. Yeah,
but as you've said, there are people who you would say toxic. Those who can't really take no for an answer. That's a different dynamic. So your suggestion is to try to detach as much as possible. I think this is easier said than done, because yeah, for some people
absolutely,
who are in abusive relationships, for example, whether it
absolutely.
is with your partner or with your relatives or even with toxic friends or toxic colleagues and abusive employers, that's different. So that's a little bit more tricky to maneuver. So yeah, do you have any specific what's the word, not really template, but like, do you have lines that to be able to set those boundaries if people aren't used to saying no? How do you usually say, like, I'm sorry, I can't?
Okay, if we are not taking into account those people who would get simple no, sorry, I cannot, and we're talking a bit more difficult cases, then the phrases like, I'm not ready to answer this question right now, I need to think about it. And obviously, when you think about it later on, when you're in a calmer state, you can um, give a negative answer or say no with a lot more confidence in your voice. I always recommend to prepare your fights. I call it prepare your fights. If you need to confront somebody about something what they do or something they say, do it in a calm state of mind, because having an argument, and I'm guilty of that, when you are in emotions, when the rage is here and frustration is here, and there's not going to be constructive conversation. So if
Mm,
you need to say no to somebody, take a break. Say, I need to take a break. I need to take 5 minutes.
mm.
Doesn't matter if the other person reacts or not. Walk out. Walk out, take a deep breath, get your answers clear together in your head. Come back and give an answer.
Yeah, that's
Get you
actually very useful
yes,
advice.
I am not ready to talk about this right now. I need to take a break. If you need to give answers straight away and you having your emotions under control, you can also answer that I'm not comfortable with this request. I do not understand why you're asking me about this again when I have already answered you no. And in general, it does really depend on situation. It does really depend on situation. But it is always good to say, I'm not comfortable with this. I'm
Yeah.
not happy about this. I cannot do this.
I like your advice about taking a break and taking that space, because I was actually having this conversation with another guest yesterday, Caitlin. We were talking about burnout and how it actually affects your brain. And when you are burned out, your brain is not functioning as much as it should, and it's hard to respond to situations like that, because it's the two areas of your brain aren't really communicating very well. So for example, I've been in a position where I was burned out. I was being dumped with all sorts of things to do, that I was already overworked and exhausted, and those people are still giving me things, even if I'm like 150% of my workload already, like over workload. So
Mhm.
for me, I just kept taking them all in, even if I wanted to say no, because I didn't have that headspace to have a fight. I
Mhm.
didn't have that space to actually say no. And you're absolutely right. Just stepping back, not actually giving the response immediately, just to say,
Mhm.
let me think about this, just to put you in a better footing, to put you in a better position to actually say no, because you prepared yourself to say no, if that makes sense.
Yes,
So
yes,
that's
yes,
actually
absolutely.
a really useful advice. I've For people who are in that position where they immediately just give a response, when they are not used to saying no, they end up
Mhm.
just saying yes, because they don't like confrontation, and they don't like you know uh letting people down. But
Mhm.
when you do that, you're actually letting yourself down, and you might end up letting them down as well, because if you don't have the capacity, then you're not
True.
really helping anyone.
If we're talking about work situation and we're talking about working for a boss who, let's say, keeps overloading you, I've had a boss like that. I've had a situation where I had three bosses who were working within the same project, and I was assisting all of them. So each one of them used to load me up with things without obviously speaking to other ones. So I used to have like things over my head to do. So one day, or well, it would be good advice for anybody really in similar situation, just to sit down with one of them, or with two of them, or with three of them, or at least if it's one boss, just with one of them, and just say, I want to clarify what are my duties, what is expected of you, of me, because during the last week to a month, I have been given this amount of tasks, and I cannot cope physically with them or mentally, which means just explain the situation that overload is not getting more work done, it's getting less things done and stressing
Mm.
you out, which is reducing your productivity. So if you must cry for help, do it.
Yeah, yeah. I
Do it.
mean, for that does take a lot of courage to do that, especially in, I have to say, that's a bit tricky, especially when the power dynamic is not equal. Especially if, for example, if you're talking to a boss and telling about your workload, and if you like, the hierarchy, the relationship is not equal. It can take a lot of
Yes.
courage and a lot of willpower to actually open up that conversation. That's why sometimes having allies and having mentors in your career to build up that courage, or
Mhm.
even sometimes just to have a listening ear, and just to give you a different perspective on how you can resolve this problem. Having a coach, for example, can help, because yeah, certainly it does take a lot of courage, and especially when the relationship is not equal.
Yes, it is true. And if we are talking about work relationship, you can take conversation to your boss and start it like this: this is your business and you need it to succeed, and if I make mistake, you will lose money, and if something is not going to be done, your business will be damaged. And at the moment I am overloaded with this and these tasks, and it's too much, and I'm not doing my work properly. So you can take the conversation into that perspective. That will make them think about their own interest,
Mm.
and not about, oh, is she
Not
really
It's not
qualified?
just about you, it's
Exactly. It's
actually
not.
for
It's not
the
about you. It's about the whole team. It's
the
about the
unit.
whole process.
Yeah.
Exactly, because it's a system. And if he has been building it for half a year, 2 years, 20 years, he will get affected. All the
Yeah.
small people in the company make the whole system work. We're all parts of the system. So if something starts failing, the other
it
things will
falls
start
apart.
failing.
That
Exactly.
actually makes it so it makes it constructive, because for some people who don't want to appear as complainers, because they want to please people, and
Mhm.
they don't want to appear as bitches, if you like,
No,
someone
for
who says,
sure.
it's not, you actually do have the best interest of the team at heart. Because if you fall, if you do wrong things, and actually if you get sick, because
Mhm.
you are overworked, then it actually can affect the team, and it can affect
Mhm.
the day-to-day running of of the organization. So for people who are thinking, oh, I don't want to be seen as someone who says no, because it looks selfish, and I might they might think that I'm lazy. it's not a it's not a selfish thing. It's actually, when you look after, when you understand your capabilities, when you understand your boundaries and what you're able to do and not to do,
Mhm.
then you can actually contribute better to the organization, and perform better, because you're working at capacity and not over.
Exactly, exactly. And if in any business, there's always periods of time, like holiday season or just a busy business season, where we all have to push extra hard and make a bit more of extra work, and it's fine. But if you do see, if we're talking about the situation and you find it really, really relative to your own situation, if this is something what goes on in your company all the time and you're overloaded all the time and bosses are not willing to make changes no matter how many people speak to them, start looking for a different job. That's not going to change in any nearest future, and you're just going to get burned out, sick, and it's going to cost you money to recover
Mm.
and get better.
That's right. Yeah.
So
If it's
if there is
affecting your physical health, your psychological
exactly.
health, it will affect your social life, your family. Certainly I've been in that position, because I haven't set my boundaries, and it's causing me so much distress at all
Mhm,
levels. And at some point my body just gave up. I was
mhm.
picking up all sorts of illnesses that I've never experienced before, and it's my body's way of saying, okay, you're not saying no, I'm saying no.
I'm
You've
saying
got to
no,
stop.
exactly.
You've
Yes,
got to stop.
yes,
And it forced me, my body just completely shut.
exactly. So if this is something what goes on a regular basis in the company and bosses are not willing to listen or they just brush it under the carpet, we always have done it, just step back and have a look at turnaround of people in their company. If this is a normal thing for people come and go after a few months, bosses are not going to value you or your time. Start looking for a different thing. It's not always straight away possible from like a day one or two or week one. It might take a bit of time to find a different job or different possibilities. But in long term run, it will be much better for you because you might be able to find a work with healthier work environment where you will be more appreciated and more respected for your time and your efforts.
Yeah, find a place where you fit, sort of energetically, people
Yeah,
that you actually that you appreciate, being
appreciated.
colleagues. Certainly I've worked with colleagues where you go there, and it's such a pleasure, being there. I do remember one of my first supervisors in my career. The office next to him, the lady was saying, why is it that every time you have a meeting with him, I can hear you laughing all the time? What do you talk about? And I say, well, we just talk about work, actually, just fun things that we do, boring things like we do editorial things. And but I don't know, you just have fun. You enjoy, the company of your colleagues, because it's a supportive environment. So when you are in that position, you feel alive. You actually feel happy to say yes, even to things that are outside of the remit of your work, without
Yes.
burning you out, because it gives you pleasure, it gives you energy. And certainly I've had the opportunity to work with people like that, who actually energizes me, makes me happy being at work, doing things with them, collaborating. And if you are in an environment that just eats your soul up, and you feel like it is such a burden to be there because the environment is so toxic, It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be that way. If you are, again, yesterday I was having this conversation with Caitlin. You can look at internal factors and external factors. Sometimes, you can work through your internal processes, like, the things that you can't say no to but you should. These are the things that you can process in your head. But there are also things that are external, things that's outside of your control. No matter how well you've put in your head that I have to say no, and when you actually say no and nothing happens on the ground, then that's an external thing, and you have to deal with that. If you have to
Mhm.
go, then then so be it, to look after yourself and to look after your well-being.
Yes, that's for sure. Yes.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Lana. I really do appreciate our conversation today. I mean, setting boundaries is certainly something that a lot of people struggle with, especially for members of our community. The community is called Living with Purpose, and so many of us are purpose driven. We love to serve people, we love to care for other people to the point that they actually don't say no to anything, and it burns them out, and they haven't set
Yes.
boundaries. So it's wonderful to actually have this conversation, to realize that we do need to set boundaries sometimes, look after ourselves. The people who care and the people who understand, people who are open, they will understand. They wouldn't be offended by that. It's going to
No.
be okay, they'll be fine. But for those who are a little bit toxic, a little bit problematic, the truth is that's their problem, not yours. So you
Yes.
don't actually
Sometimes you
have go on.
sometimes you cannot change people. Sometimes you cannot change people just because you say no to them.
It's
So
their issue, not
yes,
yours.
it is their issue, and very often these issues take years to resolve, take years of therapy, if person is willing to go that way. If they cannot,
Yeah.
if they don't want to do that, there is nothing you can do.
You,
Nothing you
you
can do.
don't have to carry their problem, you don't have to solve everybody's problem.
Yes.
You can help if you can, but it's not your responsibility to solve everybody's issues. Like, some people might have childhood issues that they're still carrying into their adult life.
Oh,
It's not your
absolutely.
it is not your fault that they have this attitude, and that they carry this burden. So certainly setting boundaries, know your limits, respect your limits, because eventually the consequences, your body keeps score, that's what they say.
Yes.
And you do need to look after yourself as well. So Lana, if people want to get in touch with you, how can they find you, how can they connect with you?
They can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm present there. Though I don't post much, I should do. I should do. I'm also on Facebook. My You can find me just by searching my name, Lana Kenny, and I'm also part of a coaching family, Mind of a Self Thriver. We have a website with a group of coaches which work in very similar direction of health and wellness and mental health as well. So you can find me there too.
Wonderful. Well, I
Yes.
did I did find you on LinkedIn because you posted something. So I think
Yes.
your posts are, even if it is not too frequent, the posts that you are posting are actually valuable and meaningful, and that's actually what matters.
Yeah, I don't
So
like post fluffy pictures of fluffy kittens.
I know, right?
I only post if something really, really strikes me, so that
Relevant
I have
and
to share it.
meaningful.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
But thank you very
There's
much. Yeah, go
Yeah, there's
on.
one more thing that I wanted to say to everybody who's listening. Remember that learning the skill of saying no or setting boundaries, it's not something what you can just pick up from one time event. This is something what you need to work on constantly, and each time that you catch yourself in a situation, try a little bit harder to say no. Try a little. You have to train this skill over and
Yeah.
over and over again until you find yourself in a position where you're actually able to say it without feeling guilty that you're
Wonderful.
saying no.
That's actually really important. So it doesn't happen overnight. It
No.
takes a bit of practice. But yeah, look after yourself as well. Know your boundaries. And yeah, people who understand will understand. You don't really need to feel guilty about it. And it takes a bit of practice, takes a little bit of practice to
Yes.
eventually be okay with it. But yeah, that's really an important message as well.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you
Awesome.
so much for having me.
Well, thank you
It was a
very
pleasure
much,
to meet you.
Lana. Thank you. And everyone,
Bye.
thanks. I hope that you found this conversation helpful. And please feel free to share in the comments below your takeaway messages. And yeah, if you're someone who's still feeling guilty when you say no, when you actually do have to say no, type in the comments below and we'll see, how we can support you. So thanks again, Lana. Thanks, everyone. And we'll catch up again next time for another purposeful conversation here in the Pami Code Facebook group. Until then, take care and bye for now. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.